Everybody knew Harriet. I mean, she was well known in this community.
She stood out as a real leader. You knew that she was the one in charge.
She's an ordinary person who was able to take what she has and take her resources and do extraordinary things.
She also was not afraid to speak her mind, and she demanded that she be treated equally.
She was thought of as an eccentric person.
Here is a lady who started it all that changed my life.
In the period after World War II, ideals and values were changing. While men returned from the war to re-enter the workforce, mass marketing promoted women as happy homemakers.
New palm olive cleans thoroughly without irritation.
But from a small town in Kentucky, one woman would aim higher.
Harriet was the sort of person who, although she was a wonderful cook, a wonderful mother, a wonderful housekeeper, that was not enough.
In 1929, Harriet Drury came to the University of Kentucky, where she met her future husband, Dr. James Farrah Van Meter. She left the university to start a family, but events and her own self-determination converged in an extraordinary story that would affect the lives of millions. This story reveals what one woman with passion, vision, focus, and opportunity did to make a community, a state, and the world a better place.
The thing that really intrigues me about Mrs. Van Meter is that she really didn't have the easiest life. She's not this mythical icon that I think a lot of people make her out to be. She was a very human person.
She had 3 children, and Nancy has lived away from Lexington a lot. Then they had another child who died about age 2 or 3 of SIDS, I guess you would say. Jimmy, I think, was the oldest, and he's now about 70, but he had an accident at birth, at the time of birth, which rendered him retarded, which of course got her very interested in looking after people and providing what was needed for them. Often people get energized to do something when something bad has happened to them.
You know, it was a life that was mixed with tragedy and with absolute moments of greatness.
Harriet became immersed in philanthropic work. Sensing a need, she would take action. She was on the boards of the first Kentucky Commission on Mental Retardation, the Kentucky Commission on Child Welfare, and the Kentucky Council of Churches. She became a legendary Sunday school teacher. She had a passion for early childhood education, and from 1947 until 1949, she was headmistress of Sayre School, working without compensation to guide the school through troubled times. She founded the Manchester Street Center, a community center and library for people of all ages in the poorest section of Lexington, Kentucky.
Harriet had her own agenda. She was involved in many activities, many organizations, and usually when she was involved, she was president.
She started the Manchester Center, and she got me to come out there and volunteer. The facilities were so poor and the people were so poor. No, she started and I just helped her.
Harriet always seemed to have a clear vision of what needed to be done. Her passion was contagious, and she did not hesitate to encourage others to participate. She had a way of bringing people together.
I first met Harriet, I think it must have been about 1953. We were looking for a church and were particularly interested in a church that would help our young daughter who was 2.5 to 3 years old. So we had heard that there was this wonderful program at Maxwell Street Presbyterian. Julie had been in the program just a few months, Harriet asked me if I would help in the program. And it's such a tribute to her that it was considered an honor to be asked. You never refused if you were.
Initially, with me, I came back to Lexington after service time in law school, and when within 6 weeks she had me by the collar and said she wanted me to be on one of the boards that she was involved with for a parents group for the mentally retarded young people. You can't tell Harriet no. She was sort of like the steel magnolia. She got it done.
During the 1950s, Harriet's growing interest in international affairs led her to head the Kentucky branch of the International Women's Club and to invite guests of all nationalities and races into her home, not a typical gesture in those conservative times. In this audio recording, you can hear Harriet's frustration with segregation.
In 1950, I started having Sunday night suppers for the students. There was no place for them to eat. So on Sunday night, they all came to my house.
She invited people of other races and creeds and nationalities into her home. She let them live there with her and her own family. And I don't know for sure, but I can't imagine that that would have been looked upon very, very nicely by people in her own community, people that she went to church with, people that she socialized with.
It was the Indian students and the Pakistanis particularly, we had no blacks at that time. They were dark-skinned, and this was before 1954, which was the end of segregation. And these people had a very hard time.
I mean, segregation was very much a part of the culture in Lexington. I think the schools were integrated in 1965, and so mixed marriages were considered probably something strange and unusual. And my husband is from India, and he wears a turban. I mean, he definitely looks like a foreigner. And initially, when we would go to restaurants or public places, we would receive a lot of attention.
So there was no one in Lexington, which is a very provincial place still, and in those days very provincial. There was no one interested. It was a cold place.
I think people looked askance at her having Indian students in her home, having foreign students, that's what they were called, foreign students in her home, and encouraging them to come here and to work and to study. And that was frightening to some people.
So people thought I was really kind of crazy, just taking this initiative and being with these strange people. And at first they would say all sorts of things like, you surely don't let them use your silverware. You don't let them eat off of your china.
She had the courage of her convictions, and I imagine that anybody who wanted to challenge her thought several times before they did.
Yes, these were conservative times, yet Harriet Van Meter remained committed to the idea that lives could be enriched by extending our hands to each other, despite cultural differences, and she took it upon herself to act accordingly.
I think that she was a strong woman. I think she believed in being a woman, but more importantly, just believed in being a human, and that was her stance. She wanted to treat other humans the way that they should be treated, man, woman, child. She treated them all as people.
She was encouraging American families and international families to build relationships and to get to know each other. And that was very important because the families who were coming from other countries, when they came to Lexington, they it was important that they leave the United States with a good impression and feel that they had been welcomed and that there was a place for them in Lexington. And I don't think that they would have felt that without Mrs. Van Meter and her welcoming.
They loved her. She was home base when they were here. So that was nice to see, and it was nice to realize how much difference she made in so many lives. It's hard to calculate how many lives she did help.
Education was important to Harriet, and in 1953, at age 43, she re-enrolled in college.
I know that in the 50s she went back to school, and non-traditional students were not something that's even invented. Nobody understands non-traditional students, and you went to college at the college age, and this was just unheard of. So here she is, a mother, and goes back to college. And she gets her degree, and then decides to go for a master's degree, gets a master's degree in social work, and is Phi Beta Kappa. She's so smart, Phi Beta Kappa. So again, one can picture that this really, really bright woman was placed in a traditional city, in a more or less traditional marriage, where she could have rested on her laurels or just been a traditional wife, and this bright woman was just consumed with trying to help other people.
In 1965, the State Department invited Harriet to join the National Association of International Educators on a study tour around the world. When the trip ended, Harriet took the opportunity to remain in India and explore the country for herself. Her horror at the immense poverty and the hunger for books set the stage for dramatic events to come. She wrote a letter that would change lives worldwide forever.
When I was visiting by myself, not in New Delhi where they were showing us the better schools, the private schools, but I was seeing the village schools, I realized there weren't any books. And I stood there and watched these students waiting to borrow a book that they could study from.
Mrs. Van Meter had always been interested in literacy. She had begun a literacy organization here locally in Lexington to address literacy needs in a very poor community, and had also become very educated herself at a time when women historically weren't educated. And this really struck her. And she said, we have to do something about this.
And I think that she was tapped on the shoulder to do this. She somehow or another, she was placed in that country, in that place where she saw that line of people, and she was given that epiphany, if you will, to go forward and do good works from that point forward.
So when I got home, I wrote a letter to the Hindu, which is an English language newspaper, and I said, I don't know what I can do about it, but if there are people there who really need a book, if they will write me, I'll try to find somebody who will send them that book or a book like it. And I talked to a number of people. They said, oh, that's the silliest idea. You can't do anything about that. But I knew I could.
So she came back to the States, and just from her friends and people she knew, she gathered up books and started sending them to India.
She put the inquiry out in a newspaper in India. If we could provide books for you, would you be interested? And she got the letters poured in. And so from that beginning there, she expanded that to other places in the world, and the letters poured in again.
Well, we were able to do it, and it was just remarkable. The name I gave it was International Book Project.
The International Book Project actually began in Harriet Van Meter's basement in 1966.
Harriet just had a plain basement with ceilings that weren't very high, and there were books stacked everywhere.
It was notoriously crowded because you had to pack a lot of books in there. It had been flooded once, so it was a little musty too.
She began wrapping and sorting books on her kitchen table.
Her house, her basement, her friends, and people that she just knew from church and other things, I'm sure that she started pulling everybody in.
Harriet not only was sending books, she was creating international friendships and possibly even changing the image of Americans abroad. She felt that literacy combined with the human touch could bring understanding and promote peace. And she encouraged book donors and recipients to develop relationships by mail. This simple gesture helped build bridges of understanding between the people of the United States and people around the world.
I believe my father saw an ad in the newspaper in 1966 from Mrs. Van Meter asking people if they needed books. And my dad responded to that particular ad indicating that he had young children, and they matched us up with a family here, and we got our first books in 1966.
We first began getting letters of thanks back from Mr. Krishnamurthy, who writes beautiful letters and was very, very grateful for the books. And all along he credited the International Book Project for helping his sons do so well in school as they did. All three boys were top students.
We would go to the post office, with a lot of joy, expecting all these books to be there. And as kids, we would kind of fight over these books, and it used to be a big family occasion to get all these books.
I don't think at the time we started sending the books that I ever had any idea that we would meet and become friends and almost family with the people that we sent books to.
Beginning with the help of friends and acquaintances in Lexington, Kentucky, books were shipped and relations built around the globe. Participants in the book project were empowered to direct its growth. The idea rapidly spread. The IBP worked with recipients in war-torn and impoverished regions to determine the types of books that would benefit them most. And the books were shipped by the pallet, sea container, or in U.S. Postal Service M bags. Mrs. Van Meter's energy and influence began to spread worldwide.
We're able to address literacy needs on a grassroots level. We're able to send books to missionaries. We're able to send books to Peace Corps volunteers, to small teachers' colleges. We're able to send books to elementary schools and orphanages by the bag. Not every organization in the world that promotes literacy can handle 20,000 books. Sometimes they just need 20.
I can remember an address overseas that we were requested to send it to the house behind the big tree. And that actually got mailed in that kind of way, and it got through. The books got through, and evidently it must be a heck of a tree. But it did get through. It's not a pipe dream what she's doing. The book project's not a kind of thing you can just attach to yourself as a resume. There was an off-site warehouse. There was a warehouse of books in her basement as well. There was always activity going on. There were all these letters to answer. You felt this whole world out there funneling into this little Midwest town of Lexington, Kentucky. So you were impressed with that. You felt you'd stepped into something that had a larger scope. And then you saw the outreach.
As requests for books poured in, the reach of the International Book Project continued to grow. Donors and recipients struck up relationships that would continue across generations. From the determination of one woman working out of her basement in a small town in Kentucky had come an idea that tapped countless hearts and minds.
The International Book Project was the first institution that sent those books to us. They're so precious. This enabled us to change the lives of young people who might have otherwise become criminals, terrorists, thieves, or simply militiamen who would destroy the very society they were expected to serve after completing their education. Your assistance has enabled us not only to graduate people, to train them and give them skills and information, but also to participate in the culture of peace, which is gradually spreading throughout the country. In Africa, and particularly in those war-torn societies, education is not really only for academic training, but it's also a way of consolidating peace.
The area that I think Mrs. Van Meter focused on was sort of the intellectual development, and that was very unique. You know, it's different from what other people have done. Like Mother Teresa went to India and said, "Let me help the poor people." In a way, this is equally important because you have to cater to different needs of people. And I think that aspect of realizing that there is value here sort of speaks a lot about what Mrs. Van Meter was able to do.
The whole project is just fascinating to me, the way it started and the way it continues today. And you know, the lions are not ready to lay down with the lambs in the world today. So we're going to have problems in the world today. And I think that knowledge, education through learning, through reading of books helps bridge those problems that we have in ways that you don't necessarily see in the newspaper each day. But people want to learn, they want to read, and this provides that, and no other men are like it as far as I'm concerned. I decided to nominate her for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1986. Harriet Van Meter came in the top 8. It would not tell us where, so I like to think that she came in at least second.
It is said that a book is a living, breathing document that grows richer with each reading. Harriet passed away in 1997, leaving a legacy that continues through the work of the International Book Project. Libraries have been named for her. Her enthusiasm and tenacity have inspired others to recognize opportunities in their own lives. And well-known projects like the Make-A-Wish Foundation have been influenced in part by Mrs. Van Meter.
I always felt because she gave so much to me and because she gave so much to so many other people, it was important that we sort of continue on with that tradition and that effort. When the opportunity to become involved in the starting of the Make-A-Wish Foundation presented itself, it gave me an opportunity finally to in a way pay her back for all that she had done for me, because she had been so instrumental in my success. I don't really know what else to say, except that I was saying thank you.
Ardena Goyani's story is another example of how the International Book Project provides an opportunity to give back to a community. Ardena and her family, refugees from the war in Kosovo, were looking for a way to do something for that war-torn region. They found a way through the International Book Project.
We were forced to leave. We had about 5 minutes, and they came at gunpoint and told us that if we didn't leave, they were going to kill us.
Half of Kosovo was burned. Everything, books, music, more than 200 schools. I decided all my books from my house to leave at my sister's house. And when the war started, the Serbs police went in my sister's house and they put the fire on the house.
And I knew that I could do something in America because everyone's so willing to give. We went to the International Book Project, and then we were there all day in the freezing cold, and we packed about 10,000 books, and all of them are now in Kosovo, and I'm just so happy. And I'm going there in a couple of weeks, and I can't wait to go see the library full of books.
One person touching the next person who touches the next person can create a community of people that make a difference. In the case of Harriet Drury Van Meter, it's the power of one. The idea that one person can, with something so simple as a book. Encourage and empower other people. That one person can change lives, change the world.
Throughout the world today, in many small villages, many big cities, if you mention International Book Project, eyes light up and people say, oh yes, my children receive books from them, or I receive books, or my town library received books from the International Book Project. So one person does make a difference when you're sharing in that way.
She seized on an opportunity to do something that in many respects helped change the world. I don't mean to put it on too big a scale, but the world changes in small ways, and in ways sometimes that we can't even ourselves perceive, and that aren't necessarily palpable to us. But the fact of the matter is, as one person has the opportunity to learn, then they'll spread that opportunity on to other people. And if there's a book available and one person reads it, they may tell somebody else to read it. And the influence of those 5 million books, for example, is exponential, because so many people benefit directly and indirectly from that.
I think that Harriet's shoes are big shoes to fill, and if I can fill up a tiny piece of them, then I think that I can leave this world satisfied. She did some incredible things, and I can only hope that I can do a little of what she's been able to accomplish. I believe in what she's done, and I believe that we all have an opportunity through her to continue this project and to continue her dream and to make this world better for everyone.
You've got to leave yourself open for opportunities in this life, and when they come, take them.